I think a lot of it is in the tone of voice. Tone of voice is really important, and we have always been a kind of agency that's not smoke and mirrors, or it's what you see is what you get. So the tone of voice is professional but friendly.
Hello and welcome to the Brandtuned podcast, hosted by me, Shireen Smith, IP lawyer, marketer, and author of Brandtuned. The podcast focuses on how to design brands, avoiding commoditization and intersecting them with intellectual property during the creation process. My guest today is Christine Mackay of Salamandra, an animation agency. She helps her clients to communicate complex messages using animation. Christine has just written her own book as well, Destination Animation, which we'll find out about later, I'm sure. So welcome to the Brandtuned podcast, Christine. Please tell us more about yourself and what you do.
Well, thanks so much, Shireen. Thanks so much for having me on. So yes, I run an animation studio called Salamandra UK. We've got studios in Eton, Dundee, and feet on the ground in San Francisco as well. And we primarily work with B2B animation, unlike the sort of the Disneys and the Pixar type of animation that are very popular and quite beautiful. We help businesses to convey their complex messages using animation on any platform, actually. And we work with 2D, 3D, AR, VR, motion graphics, mix it up with live film footage, that sort of stuff. And it's really about getting those complex messages across visually, because it makes it more memorable. And yeah, we're all pretty passionate about doing that. And because we don't work in one particular industry, we work about 18 industries or so. It means that no 2 days are ever alike. And with technology changing at a pace, whether it's the hardware or the software, it means that we get to experiment and try all sorts of new things, which is really good fun.
Right. So when did you start the business, and what actually led you to do that sort of line of work?
So I actually ran, so I've traveled a lot overseas, working and travel. And I actually started Salamandra in Africa years ago, and then moved. So I drove across Africa down to South Africa, stayed there for a number of years, then went to New Zealand, and that's where I discovered animation as an incredible sort of medium. And then when I came back to the UK, and then I thought, well, there's definitely a gap in the market for helping clients getting conveying their complex messages across. And this is a brilliant way of doing it. I'm very visual myself. I've even got sort of like more of a visual memory, and I learn better visually. So I thought it was a great medium to help businesses to get, whether it's internal comms or adverts or corporate explainers, you name it. There's all sorts of things that we can do with animation. And I started at Salamandra UK in 2014, so coming up to 8 years in June. And actually, when we first started, we weren't as niche and just animation. We were animation, brand, and web. So we had all these different services that we could help businesses with. And then we sort of started niching more and more. It went animation, brand, and web. Then it went animation and design, and now it's just animation. Although we still do quite a bit of designing. I mean, it's still part of what we do anyway. But the focus is definitely animation and conveying those complex messages.
Did you have experience running a business before? I mean, what led you?
Well, I did when I first started Salamandra overseas, which was more of a design and comms kind of company. So I ran that for 6 or 7 years before leaving for New Zealand. And so I had already some experience of starting a business. Yeah.
So the name, how did you go about choosing that name?
Well, it's an old nickname, and so I actually grew up. So my parents moved around quite a bit. I grew up in Portugal, and in Europe, most countries, the word salamander is salamandra, and it was an old nickname. So, and I love lizards, and it just became quite a. I don't know why, but people seem to really like the name, and I wonder whether it's got lots of A's in it, and it's quite a friendly vowel sound, and I don't know. It definitely resonates. So, and we took the, you know, the lizard theme, and we've developed it more and more. It's now a 3D mascot, as you can see behind me, dancing a little samba. So Sal is very much part of our branding, and people really identify with that as a sort of part of our tone of voice, if you like. So it's become quite useful. In fact, we heard recently that having a mascot as part of your company apparently increases your turnover by 6 or 7 times. So
oh, really?
quite happy for that.
Where did you hear that?
It's one of our speakers. We run a couple of meetup groups. One is a tech and SaaS meetup group. The other one's a farmer one, which we co-host. And it was one of our speakers that, for life of me, I can't remember. I can get back to you on that, but I can't remember his name. But I found that really interesting statistic, really.
I often think it's such a shame people don't choose something more visual. You know, they go through this branding exercise and emerge with some sort of ordinary word mark and nothing else, you know, a color, and that's all that they have to stand out with. So a mascot seems brilliant. Yeah, I think it's...
Well, even if you have a word as part of your branding, you could, and of course, I would say this, but you could animate the logo, and it could come to life. And in that coming to life, you could actually convey some of what it is that you do, because animation is very, very malleable. You can do anything. You can make it photorealistic or painterly, or, you know, vector style, any hand-drawn style, whatever you want. So, and we're very lucky. We've got a very, very talented team, and they do all that, all the different styles you want in-house, which is great. But, you know, no brand needs to be boring, even if you already exist with a certain set of brand guidelines, or even a name, or, you know, you can always bring it to life in all sorts of different ways.
Oh, that's curious. What, so you have the letters of the alphabet effectively?
Well, it could be anything. It could be something happening in front of the lettering, and then it pops into the letters, or it could be, you know, something happens before the letters even get drawn on. We've got animated email signatures, so every time we send out a email, we've got our own sort of animated branding that goes out with it.
Yeah, I can see it on your signature.
And it's what makes it memorable. People sort of get what you do instantly, and you can do that with a GIF, which is a short, you know, 3 to 5 second animation. You can repurpose in all sorts of different ways. You can use it in electronic white papers, or social media, or email signatures, or peppered around your website presentations. There's lots of different ways of doing it. You know, we are humanly attracted to images before text, but we're even more irresistibly attracted to moving images. You can't help it. It's distracting. You go and look at it, like Sal behind me, who moves every once in a while. People say, well, it's very distracting. Well, yes, that's the point. People don't kind of forget it. And when there's a number of people on a big sort of Zoom call, people always notice when my team or I am on the call, because we've got our branding behind us. And it's brands are valuable. They're an expensive but very valuable asset to have in any business, and I think you should treat it with the sort of the how should I say, the importance and the focus it needs. It's really what gets you out there and what people remember, isn't it?
So did you have help with your branding in 2014? Did you actually launch it with the logo you now have and Sal, or have you made...
No, 3D Sal didn't exist then. So it was very much just similar to the branding you see above, which has got the lizard and the writing, although the font and the branding has morphed over the last sort of 7-8 years. So I used when I first started, actually, I used, because I had traveled around quite a bit, I used my contacts to set up and outsource to various people before I started organically building the brand and the company rather, and having people work, you know, as part of a physical team in the UK. So, but because I'm quite visual, I already had sort of quite a few ideas in my head. But yeah, it does take a good designer to create something that works well. And I love the colors as well. I think the colors are quite, so it's you know, that teal green, turquoise, and the vibrant green. I think it's nice and bright. I do like bright colors.
So when did Sal emerge?
3D Sal. So he's sort of morphed from 2D to 3D, and we've had 3D cell for a good few years now, about 3, 4 years, something like that. I can't remember exactly, but like most brands, they sort of organically improve as you go.
So how much thinking did you do when you started the business in terms of how you were going to differentiate yourself from competitors? What competitors were there? Tell me about that.
I think a lot of it is in the tone of voice. Tone of voice is really important, and we have always been a kind of agency that's not smoke and mirrors, or it's what you see is what you get. So the tone of voice is professional but friendly, and the brand's quite playful, but again serious in the sense of our skills are definitely been proven. Where we've been very fortunate to be multi-award winning in both film and business. So that obviously reflects that we're kind of recognized in those fields, which is fantastic. And with regards to sort of, I think with any business, when you get started, you just have to just go for it. Obviously plan as much as you can, but it's never a perfect time. So I think with any branding, even if it's not 100% ready, just be as ready as possible, go for it, and then improve it as you go. So I think at the time there weren't many agencies offering B2B animation, and to be fair, it's still not massive. I mean, compared to say branding agencies or customer experience, user experience, those kind of agencies, there's quite a lot. But with animation, because it's quite a skilled thing to have to know and have under your belt, I guess. And also with many animators, when they sort of finish their degrees or what have you, they tend to want to go and do all the big Disney Pixar type animations. And what we do is quite different. So it uses different platforms. It's obviously short projects rather than projects that work over 2 to 5 years, where you might be working on, I don't know, 2 minutes worth of film over 2 years, whereas you might be working on 60 seconds over 4 weeks. It's very different sort of approach and different formats, but equally, I think, really good fun, because you get to see the project from beginning to end. Whereas if you're working with massive teams of people, you are an important cog, of course, but you're still a cog in a much larger machine.
Yeah. So what does a salamandra represent to you? Because to me, the sort of a lizard is kind of something I'd recoil from. So tell me more about why you chose that.
Well, I think lizards are incredible creatures. I think they come in all shapes and sizes. A salamander, a real salamander, is an incredible creature because it can actually come out of the ashes. It's a bit like a phoenix. And often where we grew up, I grew up in sort of woods in Portugal, and every summer there'd be sort of forest fires and stuff, and the sun would get, and through fire, that's when the salamanders come out, and they're quite spectacular. They look like they're wearing hippie outfits. They're sort of blacks and oranges and yellows and stuff. It looks like sort of tie-dye kind of look. They're quite amazing. And I think everything that they denote, I mean, lizards in any format, they live in all sorts of different territories. A salamander, as I say, can be reborn through ashes. I think they are clever, and I don't know, there's lots of attributes that I like about lizards. I find them really beautiful. There's one lizard, I think it's from New Zealand, that's really cute. It's a bit bright green like Sal, and doesn't have any eyelids, so it uses its tongue to lick its eyes, and it looks like windscreen wipers. It's really funny, but they're very, very cute. They look really naughty and sort of I don't know, have a twinkle in their eyes. So I think they're cute and funny and smart. So I guess those are some of the attributes that I would associate with a brand. We are a professional but sort of fun kind of brand, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, Sal is very endearing for sure.
So hopefully you don't recoil from him.
No, but the the idea of a lizard, choosing that, but I guess there's crocodile as well, that has chosen crocodile, Lacoste's crocodile.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, It's just, I guess I would tend to go for different sort of animals. So I'm just curious why you went.
What would you go for if you picked an animal?
I don't know, maybe a horse, or I've gone for a ram with our own sort of visual
Are you a
element.
horsewoman yourself?
No, I have ridden, but I'd be too scared to do it now.
Yes, they're
Yeah.
rather large creatures, aren't they? And very strong.
I was often very fascinated by horses as a child. I'd keep drawing horses' heads. Yeah.
A horse is really difficult to draw. You picked quite a difficult animal to draw, I think.
Yeah. So,
interesting.
So as Salamandra, then, it's really good to see somebody focusing on standing out visually instead of just, through, and also the color stands out quite a lot. But tell me about the competition, because you said it's getting more competitive. Would you be doing anything to separate yourself and differentiate yourself from them, apart from your distinctive visual identity?
To be honest, we don't really focus on the competition very much. We just get on with it. Our competitor, the people that we really look up to are much larger agencies now, and it's always good to benchmark yourself and to try and do better. But I'm not too distracted by people who are similar to us or maybe getting started, because I think the pie is big enough for everybody. I really do, and so it doesn't really faze me too much. We just do things our way. We've got so as I said, mentioned before, we are very passionate. I guess the three kind of things that make us stand out is that we get what our clients do, we generate results, and we innovate. And for us, it's all about the client. We want to delight at every stage of their experience with us, from the onboarding through to every meeting, through to obviously the end result. We want them to be sort of singing from the rooftops, which they very often do, which is great. And also obviously referrals are fantastic. When clients love what we do and then they refer us to other people, that's absolutely first prize, and we love that. And I think for any other business, whether they're in animation or anywhere else, I really think that of course you keep an eye on the competition, and particularly it's a fierce market, but I wouldn't get bogged down with that. Focus on what you want to do and your passion, because it's a bit like, I can never get over, when you're watching, say, the Olympics, and you see a race, and then right at the last minute, people look back to see who's coming. I mean, surely you should be focusing going forwards. The minute you look back, you slow down and you've given the competition, time to get ahead of you. And I've never understood that psyche. So I'd rather not get distracted on looking backwards or looking sideways. I want to look forwards. Love seeing what the people that really aspire to be alike and what they're doing. And we follow quite a lot of companies that we really like. And it's just I think you can really get bogged down with competition. I think it's more about really do what you love, and that will start shining out. And find people who are like-minded. For us, as I say, our core values are really, really important, and something that we've built together as a team, and we try and live it as much as possible too. So, for example, when we have our one-on-ones, which are as regular as as possible, sort of every 8 weeks or so, we always start by the 4 core values and how we've lived them, and that way it's quite cool, because sometimes you forget, oh, I don't know how to live that core value this week. Oh, but you've done this. Oh, yes, and then it sort of re-emphasizes who you are, why you're doing it, who you are as a team, etc. And I think if you focus on those things, much better than focusing on competition. Again, only if it really is a super competitive market, and you've got to know what your competition is up to. Yes, I understand that, but I think in our industry, it's I don't think it's like that. That's
in many industries, I think there's too many people chasing work. So what happens is there is some work for everyone, but not as much as they might all like. So that's part of why I have a strategy to differentiate and attract your ideal customers. But if you're getting enough work, I guess it doesn't matter then.
Well, I mean, we're always looking for more work. We'll never turn work away if we can help it. But Yeah, and I just think that it's all about priorities and what you focus, isn't it? For us, it's about giving excellent service and, as I say, delighting our clients at every opportunity.
Yeah.
Um,
So when a client comes to you, is there a particular reason that prompts them to turn to you?
yes, often. So companies find that they can't articulate what they do internally or externally, and often we found it a lot with engineering firms and companies that are quite complex and sometimes quite hard to explain. Or pharmaceutical companies, for example, they might have or even finance companies that have very complex products. And we've had people say, "Well, we can't articulate what we do. We don't know if you'll be able to." And then what we do is to what I said earlier about we get what you do. We have to really understand what a company does and or what their service is or what have you before we can even start on the narrative. So the understanding part is really key. And once we fully understand, say, the brand, who you're talking to, what their pain points are, etc. And what is the challenge that you've got, because it might not be an animation. Then we'll come up with some suggestions on how to tackle that challenge. And for us as well, it's quite important to have some kind of call to action for whatever we create for our clients. And we also encourage them to repurpose whatever we create, because every marketing budget is finite, as we all know, and it has to have some kind of return on investment. So yeah,
Sure.
so I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. So what sort of rights do you give people? Obviously, there's lots of copyright issues, and how do you deal with that for your client?
Well, the MP4, whatever it is that we create for them, is theirs to use as they like. But any sort of things that, for example, for working in 3D, we don't give any raw files out to clients, because for many reasons. For 3D work, is because it's our work. They get the end piece, which is absolutely fine, but all the back end stuff is quite complex and remains sort of our property, if you like. But they don't need that anyway. And even if they did sort of ask for things like raw files, we normally say, well, we pretty much always say no, because when you hand over stuff like that, it doesn't get used in the same way, and it's not the same sort of model of software, etc. And it ends up getting corrupted and just a great big mess. And then we've had clients come back saying, "Well, can you fix it for us?" And it's just such a nightmare to fix something that's been really, really corrupted. So what we do is we agree on what it is they need, and that end piece is what they get.
Okay, if you were creating something like Sal for me, I would want to have copyright of that, because it's going to become part of my brand. What would you say?
Yeah, that would be fine, because it is a standalone piece. But often when we're doing 3D work, it's got quite a lot of other stuff in there. But yeah, if you're paying for a
For
3D,
the actual character,
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And do you involve freelancers to create that for you, or
No, everybody's in house.
Everyone's in house. Oh, good. So where does the book fit into that? Why have you written a book?
Well, we often get asked by clients and friends and family, that kind of stuff. How does it work? How do you know what's in my head? If I want to do an animation or anything that's animated, if I want an animated presentation or a virtual auditorium, or some augmented reality or virtual reality, where do I even start? So we're always fielding those questions. So I thought, well, I'll show you the book. This is what the book looks like: Destination Animation. And it was a bestseller on Amazon, which is brilliant, and Kindle. But the idea is really to illustrate the as a marketeer or as a business owner, if you want to start and going down the journey of creating animation, it takes you through every step of the way: how to pick a good agency, what to look for in a good agency, how do you do the brief, what should be in it, what are the different styles you can go for, what are the formats, how can you use it, etc., etc. So it really goes through all the different steps, and that's why it's called Destination Animation, because it's done a bit like an underground map, where it shows our methodology of what we do, client sign off, the next bit, the client sign off, etc. It's a very collaborative process, the way that we run it, so that it's not that we run away and go and make an animation, come back and here you go, and the client's not seeing any of it. It's very much they sign off at every stage, and it sort of talks about the different stages. And also, I think it's many people think that for some reason animation is cheaper than video, and to this day I don't understand why. Because when you're videoing something, say you're a half-day shoot, for example, everything that you're shooting already exists. The earth, the sky, the leaves, the birds, the people, the gravity, sound. But if you're creating an animation, you literally have to build everything from scratch. Your world, your 3D-ness or 2D-ness, the sound, the voiceovers, the obviously the narrative, etc., etc. So for a 60-second, say, animation, it could take us 4 to 6 weeks with a bunch of people working on the project, with obviously approval processes with the clients. So it is a chunky piece of work. But the great thing about it is then if further down the line you need to amend it or update it or refresh it or anything like that, if you had it on film, you'd have to go back to the same place, get the same setting, get the same people, the same talent, same lighting to make it look like it's the same piece. But with animation, you can, change it at any stage. You can change the voiceover to any language. You've done pretty much every language, I think, in most parts of the world in the animations that we've done for business. And if you take, for example, an IKEA catalogue, most of the photographs aren't photographs, they're 3D renders. And the same with a lot of car ads, where, for example, you might have, they might do a shoot in beautiful winding roads in Italy or France, and then suddenly decide to change a bumper. Well, they're not going to do the same shoot again. They actually get companies like ours to go and recreate digitally the actual bumper to show how it's, with a new shape. So CGI's it's come a long way, and it's often very hard to work out what's real and what's digital. And that's what makes it really good fun, because, we found that during COVID, for example, and lockdown, we've created virtual auditoriums, we've created a hybrid, green screened, and then we create anything you like behind a speaker. We've had, in something that we've done, we've had Sal walking across the stage and having graphs in 3D come up next to me while you're talking. And this is in a sort of a fake massive stage with all sorts of things going on in the background. So it really brings a different dimension to if you are stuck behind a screen in a Zoom or you can't get to a conference. And with VR, for example, you can create virtual expo stands. You can, send a headset through to VIP customers and create a whole demo with avatars. Avatars is the latest thing as well. It's very futuristic.
So with the book, then, people are more likely to come to you ready to go ahead, because they'll have done more of the thinking, and you'll have less explaining to do to them. Is that right?
Well, maybe not. I think it depends on where they were to begin with and what they want to do. There's still lots of discussions to be had with regards to, what is their business challenge and what they need help with and why they want to do it. But yeah, hopefully they get a better idea and a better idea of what's out there as well, because it's people say, well, how much is an animation? Well, it's like, well, do you want 10 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, 10 minutes? Do you want 2D, 3D, a mixture of the two? I mean, how complex is it? Is it one character? Is it 20? It's really, everything's tailored. Everything we do is tailored, and we, assist clients to, work with them to get the best possible solution that they need.
Is there a starting price that they should, that you?
It really depends on what they want. Again, whether it's a 2D thing or a 3D thing, and again, how complex it is. For example, you could do a 3D illustration that's not moving, that then doesn't need any bones. So Sal back here, he's built in 3D, but he's completely boned, which means that we can move him and make him do all sorts of things, from blinking to breathing to opening his mouth to moving, walking, jumping. And to bone him up is a completely different job than just drawing him in 3D. So again, it depends on what you want.
If you create a cartoon character, do you also do that, or
a cartoon as in what, two-dimensional rather than three-dimensional? No, cartoon 2-dimensional ones that are not boned. They're
but
drawn
you
on.
Do that?
Yes, we do.
Oh, you do 2D. So presumably that would be cheaper, and somebody could get.
Again, depends if you're doing.
There's lots of drawings to do, aren't there?
Well, it's mostly done. We do have some hand drawn, but it's quite rare. We tend to do it. It's all sort of computer generated. Drawn. Well, it is still drawn, but it's drawn digitally, as opposed to in a sort of a traditional style, if that makes sense.
It sounds very complicated. So,
well, if you read the book, it's quick to read. It's not too long, and it gives you a good idea.
So I've got a few questions before we finish. One is, what do you think is the single most important thing a company needs to focus on as far as its brand is concerned? You know.
I mean, that's a big question. Single most thing they need to think about from a branding perspective.
No, as far as their brand is concerned, or alternatively, how would you define a brand?
I think a brand is many things. I think it really is your identity. So it needs to reflect who you are. So if you're a very serious traditional company, you don't want a clown denoting what you do, and vice versa. If you're, again, it depends. It totally depends on who your target audience is. You've got to understand who your target audience is, who you're servicing, and what do they like, and what resonates with them. So as long as whatever you're doing resonates with that target audience, then you're kind of halfway there. And then it needs to resonate with what you're offering, who you are, and how you do it. For example, one of my favorite brands is a company called, and I'm sorry, there's an expletive in here. It's an Australian brand called Who Gives a Crap, and they're a charity. They create bamboo-based toilet paper, and their branding is fantastic because it is always on point. It is always very funny, very cheeky. Excuse the pun, which they use that pun a lot, and everything from the way they advertise to their billing to the way that it's packaged. So every touch point screams their brand, and to the point that when you pick up the box that it arrives in, it says, "Oh, your bum looks nice," or something like this, and you're carrying this around. We have it at the office, and I have it at home as well. And I just think there's branding everywhere. You should, if you've got a brand, make sure it's everywhere. We certainly do. We remember using our brand at every possible touch point that we possibly can, because it's an investment any company makes in their brand. So you should use it as much as possible and be on brand as much as possible. Yeah,
well, they're obviously doing it right, because you're the third person who on this show who has mentioned that company. Yeah.
Well, another contrast with that, for example, another brand I really love, which is a very, very traditional brand, and it's also sort of, it has morphed through the centuries, but it's still very traditional, is Fortnum & Masons. I mean, what a great brand is that? They, again, completely different from, Who Gives a Crap, but still very on point and very on brand. Everything they do, it's all about quality and tradition and beauty and taste and all that kind of stuff. And they never get it wrong either. So it's about being consistent, I think. If you pick whatever your brand is, be consistent in everything that you do to reflect that.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Christine, for coming on.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Shireen. It's been great. Thanks a lot.
Bye. That's it for this week. Do subscribe to the Brandtuned newsletter to get weekly updates. I'd also love to get your feedback. Just send me an email to info@brandtuned.com. Finally, if you liked the episode, please do share it with your friends and colleagues and review it on iTunes or whichever platform you use to listen to podcasts. If you leave us a 5-star review, it means more people will listen and we can spread the word much more quickly about the podcast. Thank you, and bye for now.